Hi, everybody. This is Paul Bryan of STRAT. Today I'm talking with Colette Kolenda, who is a senior user researcher at Spotify. Hi, Colette. Welcome to the Stratosphere.
Hey, Paul. Great to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Well, thanks for talking to me today. I have a few questions for you, but let's have a conversation as well. First question I have is, what's your current role and how did you lead up to that in your career?
Yeah, good question. My current role is a little bit different than maybe a typical user research role. I actually lead a centralized research team for Spotify Free. And we are focused specifically on helping our leadership teams understand our audience, so that's Spotify Free listeners, and as well as advertisers, so that we can really make good data-driven, long-term strategic decisions that will be in service of these two user groups. The other thing that's a bit unique about this team is that it's not just user research. We have a mix of other disciplines, including data science, behavioral science, obviously user research as well, and then also data visualization and analytics engineering as well. So we really bring a power mix of all these methods together so that we're able to holistically answer these larger scale questions and drive leadership decisions forward.
Okay, and so what does the relationship with the business leaders tend to be? Do they come to you with a problem or an opportunity, and then you structure the kind of research?
Yeah, I think so. We span product and business questions or teams, and our questions come from both sources. In addition to us kind of sniffing out some interesting opportunities where we say, oh, interesting, the business team are thinking about maybe that connects to the product side here, and maybe we can do a piece that ties both together. So it's about understanding our stakeholders and their core questions just as much as it is us kind of connecting the dots on the back end a little bit as well to find the right opportunities and doing pieces that satisfy both parties.
Okay, well, I guess I consider Spotify an engineering company, and that role seems to be kind of an ideal UX strategy research kind of role. How did Spotify come about with that, or how did that come about? Was it a tough fight, or was somebody welcoming you into that role?
Yeah, I've been at Spotify for over 4 years, and this has not been my job from the start. I started in a more typical embedded role where you're working with product managers, engineers, designers, etc. But what was happening over time was that I was doing these larger foundational pieces that proved to be of a lot of value for our leadership team and really helped them to make better decisions. So actually that role sort of transitioned into building out this small team at the centralized level, at the business unit level in a centralized capacity, to better understand these core questions and have the space and time to be solely focused on that. So it definitely is an evolving process and we're learning as we're going. But I think it's a really valuable position to be in as a user researcher
Sure, definitely.
because our strengths are really in understanding. Yeah, our strengths are really like predicated on two concepts, which are like deeply understanding the product strategy and the business strategy, and also then pairing that with a deep understanding of our user base, and then connecting the dots to say, okay, well, if we want to go here, and our users are telling us these things, that actually means X, Y, and Z for our future goals. So they're really well partnered, and I feel quite lucky to be in the role where I get a chance to represent our user group well, and also ensure that we're building our product and our business for them.
This is kind of a textbook case of what I cover in my UX strategy workshop. So let me ask this question. If people are listening to this and they were like, man, I would like to join a team like that, what kinds of folks do you usually look for when you look for other people to join the team?
Great question. We've been growing the team a little bit as well, so something I've been actively thinking about. I think there are a few unique parts to this role. First is that because we like to answer questions very holistically, I look for someone who has a lot of research chops, but is also pretty eager to take that to the next level. So oftentimes we can't just apply the textbook methods that we have in user research to study some of these larger, more nebulous questions. We need to either pair them with other methods, like on the data side of things with data science or analytics engineers. And that means that we can't just like plop our one method in with these other textbook methods. We often have to adapt and really create the best series of methods to structure our learning. So someone who's got some really strong foundational chops, but also is eager to kind of bend the rules a little bit and really figure out what the right way is to study a particular problem, not just, the textbook way to study that method. And I would say the other thing is just someone with a really deep and intense curiosity. I think it's up to us to really understand the problem space so well, such that we can craft these research questions in the most meaningful and impactful way. And we can only do that if we're sponges and taking in all of the information from stakeholders, strategy, et cetera, and then really designing these mixed methods and clever studies from there.
If you thought about the product world at Spotify as kind of a continuum between optimizing very well-known products to kind of discovering new ways to do things that fit with the Spotify business model, which end of the spectrum is your team on?
My team is definitely on the generative sides. Since we aren't embedded within product teams, we don't do any optimization or tactical research. We're primarily focused on the pieces of work that will stretch our thinking in the coming years and really enable our business and product teams to make better decisions as a result of that knowledge. So we're entirely on the discovery side of things, on the strategic discovery generative side. Those are a lot of where our work sits. It's two pieces probably in particular. One is what we call strategy defining work, where we might not fully understand a space very well. And we're actually going in to figure out if we need to build strategy around that space to really move a business or a product metric or need in that case. The other is that maybe we have some strategies set out for 2020, 2021, et cetera, and we're trying to figure out how we can actually implement those strategies. So it's not as tactical as the usability studies for those products, but more so at the higher level, like if we're trying to create a whole new platform for X, Y, or Z product, how would we actually need that to take shape to meet the basic user needs? And then we could pass that on to an embedded team that runs with that work to then implement more of the details or the tactical side.
Well, I talked to a lot of user research leaders, and a lot of them say they would like to get to that world or to that place that you're describing, but they have such a backlog of kind of execution or evaluative work that they have to do. Do you have any tips or thoughts about how somebody can sort of move upstream in that process, or anything that's worked for you that you think might work for them?
Yeah, I have a few ideas, and I also fully acknowledge that Spotify is quite a well-endowed company in terms of research resources, and I fully acknowledge that not every team is like that. So first off, I'm just grateful to work in a place that enables us to kind of tackle some of these larger scale questions as well. So one question could be like, is it really you that has to do all of this tactical research? I know there's a big debate in the industry about, do you teach other people who are non-researchers to do research, or do are researchers the sole drivers of research? But there's also kind of a third dynamic there too, right? Where you could ask someone to come in as a contract role. So maybe you hire a user research contractor for a quarter to take off some of that tactical work, and then maybe you can focus on some of the more contextual and really like deeper problems to study. So there are a few ways to go about that. I've tried a variety of them, especially when I was in an embedded role. And I think for different use cases and different teams, different strategies work better than others. But I think the other piece too is just like doing those foundational, really like meaty strategic pieces and proving the value in that type of work, I think will just create the hunger from your stakeholders to say, oh, whoa, that's really impactful. I need to know more of that because I now need to make X, Y, and Z decisions. And that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. If you prove value and say, hey, we were able to deeply understand this space, and as a result, we were able to make these really concrete and meaningful decisions as a business or a product, then they're going to say, hey, I've got this next set of questions. Can you help me answer those too? So I think that for me, that speaks to the collaborative nature of Spotify, and really the intense drive to understand our listener base and our advertiser base in order to make the right decisions. So I think for me, that's been a really beneficial experience. And I think creating that drive and that hunger starts from doing the right work from the start, and then building your allies and your champions from there.
Sure. In one part of my workshop, I tell people that I had to go home to the hotel, not home, but to the hotel, and watch a bunch of videos and come back the next day to kind of create that sort of value. It was like on my own time. It seems like, maybe your calendar is full with execution or evaluative type stuff, but maybe if you do some homework and then can show that value that you're talking about, or just give some, some ideas around how that might benefit the stakeholders, that maybe you can make some progress that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's also just working in partnership with your stakeholders. If you truly understand their most burning questions, are the open questions that keep them up, biggest champions from there. So I think that that's been the avenue I've taken in my work, and it's proven to work quite well, and to the point where like basically this is now my full-time job.
So as you look down the road, what kinds of things are you excited about in terms of maybe where the user research field is going, or maybe where the digital, physical lives are kind of emerging, or in emerging technologies? What are you most interested in terms of what you see coming in the near future?
Yeah, I think I'm most interested in understanding how we can break beyond just the traditional user research molds. So for me, this really is about leveraging the superpowers of other insights disciplines to make our craft as insights people stronger, and therefore our projects more robust and in depth. So for me, I think what's really exciting is if we define insights as a practice, we can maybe start to leverage some folks in market research, maybe some folks in data science and behavioral science and all these other insights disciplines, because every insights discipline has its really clear strengths and the questions it's good at asking or answering, as well as kind of its limitations or some of its drawbacks. And by partnering these different insights disciplines or methods together, we're really able to leverage them and make them stronger as a whole. So for me, I think I'm really excited about how we can expand beyond user research to answer insights questions holistically and really get a good sense of, you know, whatever user base you study and the ins and outs of that product experience or the ins and outs of that business experience by leveraging the strengths of each other.
Yeah, it seems like if you don't take that step, then user research can maybe seem a little bit ivory tower, or maybe like out of touch with some of the service design or other parts of the business that are really complex. And if we give insights that really can't be done, you know, how useful is that after all, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes a lot of these strategic questions are just very complex. Like we have to understand it from multiple angles. And so by staying within a user research tower, we're able to answer part of that question, and that's really valuable. But what would be even more powerful is if we're able to bring other insights disciplines to the table so that we're able to not only understand foundational user needs, but we're also able to opportunity size what that means for the business or the product, in addition to understanding maybe some of the barriers that might come up if we're entering a new market, for example. And all these pieces from maybe in that case, user research, some form of data science or opportunity sizing, and then maybe some market research as well. By leveraging all those pieces, we're then able to bring that to a more strategic level and say like, hey, this is what we know about our population overall, or this is what we know about how the strategy needs to be implemented. And here are the next steps, as opposed to saying like, well, here's what we know from user research. Let me now ping the market research team and you can ask them a follow-up. It's like we should bundle this all together in one insights package.
That makes a lot of sense. I really appreciate you spending time with me today. Anything you want to say before we sign off?
No, thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you today and just hang out and get to know you a bit more as well.
Cool. Well, be safe. Talk to you soon.
Take care.